this is in a chassis. And basically this receiver is just bolted down in the chassis. And Vicki, you're going to have to really come over here to show this kind of stuff. So this is a bat receiver, not one of the models I've ever used. This is an igniter. And on all bat receivers, at least all the ones I use, this is a side bolt release. And there's a little pin that goes up. It's a threaded pin. It's threaded on one end, and it's just a rod that goes up in there, and that's what that pivots on. Well, the threaded part of that pin that goes down through there sticks below the receiver. Okay, it sticks below the receiver down in here. And of course, I haven't taken this out yet, but I got a flashlight, and I look down in there because I can see between the chassis and the actual body of the receiver. And it looks to me like the bottom of that threaded rod is jammed into the side of the chassis. Guess what? If that is the case, it won't shoot. It won't shoot. And I guess, something maybe I better stop and explain here is when you build a gun, any gun, doesn't matter what you're doing, even if it's a chassis, there's like literally dozens and dozens and dozens of different operations. And to get a gun to shoot in one hole, you have to get them all right. You can't get, let's just say there was 100 operations, and indeed there may be in some guns. Well, you can't get 99 of them right and then have one that's wrong and assume that you're going to get full potential out of whatever that barrel's potential was. In other words, it's not going to shoot. Let's just say, I always start with the assumption that every barrel that I get is capable of shooting in the zeros. Vicki, you need to get back up on there. And everything that I do in the whole process of building the gun is to try to reach the maximum potential of the barrel. And I always start with that thought, well, the barrel's capable of shooting in the zeros. So what you then have to do as you're going through the whole process is you have to make sure that each and every operation, each and every step is as flawless and perfect as you possibly can, because if it isn't, you're going to be detracting at least from the potential, the theoretical potential of the barrel. So when a guy brings me a gun and says it doesn't shoot, I start to go over and look at all different kinds of things. So I saw that immediately. That definitely is not good. I saw this box immediately, realized that he's, in all likelihood, the chamber is not matched to what he's trying to do with it, okay? That the cartridge overall lengths are wrong. Then I look at this and I see that that's threaded 5/8 24, and I'm like, that's really, really bad. Now 5/8 24, we're going to go into that here in a second. 5/8 24 is fine if the gun is a 223, because then the hole in the middle of the barrel is only 22 caliber. In other words, it's small, right? Or even 6 millimeter. 6 millimeter would be 243. So if you had a 243 hole in this barrel and you put 5/8 on the outside of it, you would still have a lot of steel. Somewhere there's a video that says, I hate brakes, and we drew a diagram. And the whole point of this is to have this muzzle not shaped like a trombone or a trumpet. You don't want it flaring out like a pilgrim's blunderbuss, I believe is what those were. Okay, that's not what we want. We want, if anything, we want uniform dimensions from the breech to the muzzle to the crown, or we want dimensions that are choked, like C-H-O-C-K-E-D, is that right? Choked? Is that how you spell choke?
C-H-O-K.
Like throttled, what?
C-H-O-K-E-D.
Say it again?
Choke, C-H-O-K-E.
C-H, okay. Choked, as in throttled, right? So if the bullet is being swaged down as it's traveling down the bullet, and the spot where it actually leaves contact with the muzzle, with the crown, is actually the tightest spot of that whole journey, that gun will shoot better assuming all else is equal, which there's a lot of factors, that gun will shoot better than one that was uniform, or definitely one that's bigger. If it's bigger at the muzzle than it is at the breech, in other words, the bullet's going to be larger when it exits, they're not going to get 1/4-inch groups. You're probably not going to get 1/2-inch groups. In all likelihood, you might not even get 3/4-inch groups, okay? So barrels really matter. Now, until I tear this apart, I'm not going to see what else is going on in here. Right, we got a bad igniter, so hopefully we got a good receiver. But the other thing I noticed, of course, is, at least in the rear here, there is no bedding whatsoever. So the back of that receiver is simply screwed down, pulled down with a 1/4-28 bolt, and it's sitting on top of what appears to be like 2 little pillars right there on each side of it, which would be like a V-block, right? Like a V-block, and it's trying to pull down and self-center on it. The deal is, this thing's held in there probably by bolt torque tension. In other words, it's pulled down into that chassis. So I see a lot of problems, and I'm not surprised. Oh, one more thing, and we've talked about this before too. People, same deal, people's hair will be lighting on fire. See, this has I won't say the name, this has a 1-piece mount on it, which is really nice, don't get me wrong. These things are beautiful, very, very well machined and stuff. But you remember, whenever, you know what, I'm not going to say that either. There was a guy here that owns a very famous scope brand that you guys would recognize. One of the highest dollar scopes, really high-end scope. The one that's just like right below tangent theta. He was here in this room, and we were talking about many, many things that were, related to optics. And he said to me, we see more scopes broken by these, damaged by this type of mount than any other thing. And of course I said, why? And he's like, well, we don't know exactly, but we think it has something to do with how the vibration travels in one piece, rather than a separate ring here and a separate ring there. So I see that also. And then, of course, too, he says it doesn't shoot. This isn't my scope. This is his scope. And whether that scope was ever on another gun that actually punches one hole or not, I do not know. So when I go to shoot this is definitely coming off of here, and one of my proven scopes is going to go on there. And it'll be two individual rings. It will not be a one piece. The other thing that really bothers me also is how this part of the chassis is actually the rail. I do not know how that is held on into the receiver itself, and that's going to be a major issue, because your rail, that's why we use BAT VRs and HRs, or any of the other models that have integral rails. That is very important. But all of that, in other words, I see a whole bunch of reasons, potential reasons, of why it might not shoot. He wants it rebarreled. I got the barrels here somewhere. This is also going to be another big decision. So this is a Bartlin. It's 1 in 10.3. It's 330 by 338. This is inch 300 at the breech by 900 at the muzzle. And it's a 30-inch blank. This blank has been cryoed. We've had this barrel for quite a while. I also have this is an inch 250 barrel. And this is also a Bartlin. It's also a Bartlin. It is also 1 in 10.3. It is also 330, 338. And it is, I believe, slightly smaller at the muzzle. That one, actually no, it's .900 too. So this is inch 250, this is inch 300, and I believe this one's a little bit shorter than that one. Anyways, one of these barrels is going to go on this receiver. The main reason why we don't know which one is, will it fit? See, that is the other problem that I have with chassis. Say that, I'm going to put a different barrel, say, in this stock. Well, it's very easy if it's slightly larger, the barrel that is, larger than the barrel channel, to sand that out. And it doesn't matter whether it's wood or laminated wood or say it's a Macmillan fiberglass stock. You can remove that material exactly the amount you need to get the clearances and to have it look right. The thing about this is we are limited here for what the diameter of the barrel that will go inside this dang thing, all right? And so, and again, until I pull it apart, I don't know which one of these is going to be. Now, this is the other thing. Because I wasn't going to do this because it's a chassis. I'm just like, no, I'm not going to do it. And he's like, would you please do it? I'm like, oh, all right, maybe. But the issue is this. So this is, like I said, this is 5/8 24. And he's like, well, I want to put, initially he said he wanted to put a suppressor on. And my first question was, well, what does the suppressor measure? And he's like, 5/8 24. And I'm like, is it one of the suppressors that have different mounts? There's different mounts now that are actually larger where they go on the barrel and then will go onto the mount. I don't have a problem with that. I should have got some of that out. I have some Area 419s here for their brake. They make different size adapters that will work. And I'm like, you know what? Because plus he also told me he wants the longest barrel, whichever of these blanks we use, he wants it as long as he can get it, to get as much velocity out of it. And I'm like, and then you want to put a suppressor on? And he's like, yes. And then he's like, and then I want to put a suppressor that's 5/8 24 on. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Again, that's partly why we're doing this video, because guys have to understand this. You can't, it doesn't matter how big your barrel is here on the end. Say it measured an inch at the muzzle. If you turn it down to 5/8 24, you still only have that little wee bit of material where the bullet actually exits. And so say this is nice and tight, nice and tight, nice and tight. Then you get to here and it gets bigger because you machine steel away from the outside. Well, it's not going to shoot to the potential of that barrel. To my way of thinking, by doing that, you damage the barrel, okay? And I'm just like, I won't do that, all right? I'm not doing it. And he's like, well, then, could we just put a brake on it? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, well, could it be 5/8 24? And I'm like, no, you missed the whole entire point. You're not getting what I'm trying to say to you. It doesn't have anything to do with the 5/8 24. What it has to do with is how much steel is here. Again, if this same barrel was 22 caliber, let's just say it was 22-250, and he wanted to put a 5/8 24 accessory, any dang accessory, on the end of the barrel, it would not be such a big deal. I still believe that threading any barrel is not a good idea, but it wouldn't be that big of a deal because you'll have so much more steel around the actual bore, the actual hole through the barrel. And so then I'm trying to explain to him, because a lot of people don't know what I'm about to say, the brakes, if you're getting them in the right place, they're not just all 5/8 24 or some standardized measurements. You can pretty much get whatever you want. And again, once years ago in a video, I showed this. This is from Harrow's Precision. Vicki, will you be able to look at this?
I'm trying. Okay.
Okay, and if you guys can't see this, just go to Harrow's Precision. Okay? So, we use Harrow's brakes, as I've mentioned in other videos, because they're right. They're right. They're made properly. And because you have to, the guy who is installing them has to do a whole bunch of work to them to make them more right. I mean, that sounds stupid, but you got to do the work to them. It isn't just something you take out of a box and you hope is right and you just screw it on the end of a barrel. You got to do all the work, and it's a lot of work. It usually takes me, maybe 10 hours to put a brake on from start to finish? It takes a long time, right? Harrow's makes I don't even know how many. I'm not going to sit here and count them all, but this is what we use these radial ported brakes, right? And I just want you to understand something here. So the first number is the diameter of the brake. That's the outside. The second number is the internal hole, not the hole through it, the hole for the threads. And then the third number is the threads per inch. So Harl's starts at 5/8 by 7/16 with 32 threads per inch. And they progress from 5/8 to 3/4 to 7/8 to multiple. In 3/4 ones, they offer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ones. And that is 3/4, 7/16, 32 to 3/4, 9/16, 32. Then they jump to 7/8. So they go 7/8, 9/16, 32, 7/8, 9/16, 32, 7/8, 5/8, 24. Then they jump to 1 inch. Now that's on the outside. 1 inch with a 1/2 inch hole in the middle, 28 threads per inch. Then, you know what, can you see this, Vicki, or not? Rather than me telling them all this information. Can you see that? And if I said it like this, does that help?
Every time you move, I have to.
Pardon me?
Every time you move, I have to like refocus.
You got it? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The point is, to do this properly and professionally, the brake should be matched to the barrel, that is the diameter of the barrel, but also to whatever the bore is, whatever the hole through the middle of it is. You have to balance those things out to get it right. Because if you notice on this barrel, because it was a big barrel, obviously you have a whole lot of shoulder right there, right? Look how much shoulder you got. Well, that's good. More shoulder is better. What is bad is that they cut all that away to get down to 5/8 of an inch. That's the bad part. So if I was going to, say I had been going to do this exact barrel, I wouldn't have been locked into 5/8, 24. What I would have done is, and I'm going to show you all these. Let's start at the big end. Okay, so that you guys can try and understand this. Because so many people want stuff hung on the, so many people want threaded barrels. But they seem to, it's rigid thinking that is just within what is normal, what people are aware of. People don't see stuff like this. Look at this brake. Okay, let me put my finger here. Okay, I should have had a dime or something so you guys can see. This brake measures on the outside. Here, look. That brake measures 1.500 on the outside, right? Now look how much steel. An enormous amount of steel. That wall right there, that wall is approximately 265 thousandths thick. Okay? And so the inside dimension, if you measure it this way, is, and again, this is not the proper way to measure this, and Vicky's got the camera over me. It's 1 inch is what it's supposed to be, okay? So here, just show them. This is 1.5 inches on the outside, inch in the middle, not the hole through it, and then 32 threads per inch. And then there's also another consideration. It is how deep are the threads. In other words, this way. Harl's makes brakes that have different depths, which determines, here, show them here, how long your tenon has to be. In other words, we're talking about from the shoulder to the tip of that. Okay? So they make brakes that are different diameter on the inside, many different threads, mostly 32s, 28s, 24s. That's what's available in this style. Okay, that's the different thread patterns that are available. And then also how deep that the threads actually go into it, which is how long that your tenon will be. Okay, so I want to show you this. Okay, so here's how they go. And I'll lay these all because we don't want to get these mixed up. I mean, look at the size of that thing, and I've used many of these. Oh, and by the way, I should show you that for all of these brakes that we're going to look at, they all have the exact same bullet hole through them, which is not a bullet hole at all. It's 0.250. They all have a 1/4 inch hole. Watch this. They all have a 1/4 inch hole going through the center of them. And it is ugly, okay?
Yeah, it's very
because they
ugly.
drilled the hole first, and then they drilled all the radial holes, and all of the burrs and everything are completely clogged inside that. Well, now, obviously, say this was going to go on a 338. 338, you need 20 thou clearance on a side. So the bullet is 338. So we want 348, 358 hole through here, through the center. Well, obviously, it ain't 358. So you got a whole lot of work to do. And you don't just run a drill bit through there if you're going to do it properly. Yes, you can drill it up close to what is going to be final diameter. But the proper way to do this is once it's completely on the barrel, in the lathe, is to go in there with a boring bar and actually bore it up to full diameter, 0.358. All right, so I want to show you this. So there's that. We'll just go down, okay? So this first one is 1.5 by 1. This is 1.25 inches. Okay, so now what's really interesting here is, look at the difference here. I want you to see this. Look how thick the wall is in this. Look how thin the wall is in this one. All right? And this is what I have a really difficult time explaining this stuff to guys. You have to, depending on your barrel, depending on your caliber, your cartridge, you've got to fit these individually. They have to mate up, is what I'm trying to say. All right? I'm doing a really bad job of this. I don't know why today. I'm not doing good. Here, look at this. So this one is also 1.25 inches. Here. You know what? I should turn these around. Can you see that? So there's, here, I'll turn them so you can see them. So that's 1.5 inches by 1. Look at all that steel. Okay? Now, this is 1.25 inches by 1. But the walls are not nearly as thick, right? Okay, now look at this one. This is 1.25 inches, that's on the outside, by 3/4 in the middle. Look how much steel.
Hold still.
So we've gone from pretty thick to pretty thin to really thick. But what you're doing is you have to turn a smaller tenon on the end of the barrel. So hopefully everybody's getting this. There's a big difference if it's a 22 caliber or a 6mm or a 6.5 or a 7 or a 30 or a 338 or a 358 or whatever. And that is why that there is so many choices, because you have to pick the right one for the right application. Now here, we use a whole bunch of these right here. We use a whole bunch of one. That is 1 inch on the outside and 3/4 on the inside. That's 750. That brake right there, we use a lot of those. That's probably our most popular brake, right? And the reason being is we use a lot of barrels that are at the muzzle, like 850, 925, like that, right? We use a whole bunch of those.
Yep.
That's our most popular one, right?
That is.
Okay, but look. Look at this one. So this is also inch on the outside, but now we have gone from 3/4 on the inside, which is 750, to 11/16. So look at them. Even though they're the same diameter on the outside, they're considerably different on the inside. Okay? Here, I got to get this out of the way. Maybe I won't go through all of these, but you're getting the idea, hopefully. And this crap's confusing, by the way. It's confusing for me whenever I sit and try to figure out now which exact one is it that we need, right? Okay, so look. So I want to show you this. So This is inch on the outside, 3/4. This is inch on the outside, but 11/16. This is inch on the outside, but 5/8. And guess what it is? 5/8 24, the dreaded 5/8 24. But again, look how much material is in that. Now, here's what we can do. Look at this. So we'll go the whole way down. The smallest one I have, is that the smallest one? No. Yes, it's the smallest one, so we go to 7/8. 7/8 on the outside by 5/8 24. And so, you know what I mean? Look, surprise, surprise. Whoever threaded that, at least they got it right, because it's about the way you would expect it. My threads are considerably tighter than that, but if you want to be able to put things on and take things off, you know, that's about right. Okay, but see, here's the issue. See how there's not enough shoulder contact. So that's actually good I just did this. So say you had that break, and you could use it, or you wanted to get it right. So that's 7/8 by 5/8 24. This is 1 inch 5/8 24. Watch. Now, you've got full shoulder contact, and what you can do, you know, if you want it to look good, this is what I do, then you contour that. You contour that. I actually cut an angle from right here to this hole right here, and it will blend in. On a really good one, you cannot tell. You can't tell that the barrel and the brake are separate pieces. They will blend so close together, I lose the line myself. All right, it just disappears. It was like it was one piece. Now, here's the issue about that. When you cut your threads really tight to your individually, in other words, not just saying 5/8 24, you actually go by what this really is, because it might be exactly 5/8 24, it might be a thou or two bigger, a thou or two smaller. If you cut your threads on this to truly match this, when they go on so perfect that what you got to be afraid of is that they don't go. Because I've actually, look at this nightmare. Okay, that one did go. And the only way I could get it back off is I had to turn it off. In other words, literally, you're threading it on, and those two pieces of stainless, they just gall into each other, and I used a dang pipe wrench to get that off. Okay, so what?
I'm trying to get a good picture of that.
Yeah, no, it's just a horrible, horrible mess. But see if you can understand this then. What I'm about to say is, and it's very interesting. You know, we've mentioned Doug Johnson. Doug Johnson's a customer of ours. He owns a concrete company over in Montana. The guy's a shooter. And we were just talking about this individual gun, and what the owner of this gun was asking me to originally do, and why I was telling him no, I didn't want to do it. And Doug happened to bring up something that's very interesting that I was aware of, but most people aren't. Doug has a gun that is threaded like this. I think it's threaded 5/8 24. And he said if he takes the brake, and I'm paraphrasing here, if he takes the brake and puts it on, normally the gun shoots like, I don't know what he said, bigger, 3/4 of an inch, like that. He said if he torques the brake down very tight onto that, suddenly the gun shoots better. So I'm just making this up because I can't remember, but say it goes from a 3/4 inch gun to a 1/2 inch gun. And I said to him, and he already knew, he had already figured it out. I said, well, you know why that is? He's like, yeah, it's constricting the end of the barrel. It is literally taking that piece of steel and squeezing it down. And so remember earlier in this video, I said a choked barrel is generally more accurate even than what we'll call a neutral barrel. Definitely more accurate than a trombone barrel or a trumpet barrel, right? Well, like I said, he already figured it out. It's like, yeah, it's squeezing the end of the barrel down. So when you're putting a brake on, when I'm teaching guys to put a brake on, we want the interface between these threads and the inside of whatever brake you're using to be literally as perfect as possible. And so with a lot of my guns, once that break, because when we're doing all this, it's soaking wet in oil. Literally, oil is dropping off of it. That is the only thing running off of it. That's the only thing that keeps it from galling. But when you put it on that last time, pretty much it's on there, and unless you use a pipe wrench and ruin it, you're probably not going to get it back off. And just as a side note, when this whole big, I call it a fad, this whole big silencer can fad came along, I had some of my guys that had extremely accurate rifles that I had built that had brakes on the end of them. And we usually don't put brakes on unless it's a big cartridge. But I'm thinking of a specific guy, and he even called me and he said, hey, I want to put a suppressor on there. You know, can I take off that brake? And I said, bad idea. I said, bad idea. I said, you don't know when you go to try to turn that off what you're going to get into, whether it's going to come or whether after you shoot these a bunch too, not only can they gall, they can literally cold weld themselves. I mean, it's not true cold welding, but it's a whole lot tighter than whenever I put it on. And when I put it on, it's pretty dang tight. Anyways, he tried to get it off, ruined it. So that's a real bad idea. Where I'm going with all of this is, first, putting anything on the end of a muzzle is dumb, in my opinion. Unless it's an AR with an 18-inch barrel and you want to put a suppressor on it. That kind of makes sense. Especially if it's going to be like a home defense gun. No, that makes sense. Or say you've got a .308 Winchester that's got a 22-inch barrel, and for some reason you want it to be quiet and you want to put one on, that kind of makes sense. But to put a suppressor on a .338 Lapua to shoot 300 grain bullets and the barrel's going to be 28, 29 inches long, to me that's very foolish. But if you are going to do something like that, you have to make certain that whatever you put here, whatever you do here, does not destroy your accuracy. And what that means is you need bigger tenons, not smaller ones, and you need to not mess this up. And you notice too, well, I guess you wouldn't notice, all of my brakes, I crown the end of the barrel with an 11-degree crown, even if a brake is going on it. And then I actually put an 11-degree on the end of the brake also. And I make the threads, like I said, so tight you almost can't get it back off. Before we go here, I want to show you these other ones in order, just so you can see what choices you have. Now you got to realize, by the time you start getting down to these, this is for, look, 7/8, 9/16. Again, look at it so you can actually see how these are changing. Here is 3/4 by 9/16. Look at that. See it? Okay. And this is the smallest brake that we have. And I don't even know if we've ever used one of these. I don't even know why we have it, truthfully. This is 3/4 on the outside, 1/2 inch on the inside, 28 threads. And it's fairly deep. You see how deep that's threaded down in there? That's down in there, it looks like. Here, I'll tell you how much it is. It's down in there 750 thousandths deep, this deep. So now this is the interesting thing. By the time you get to a brake this small, this would be for a very small diameter barrel, and it would have to be, in my opinion, this is for like a 17 caliber or a 20 caliber or no more than like 224. I would never use this more than that. Never use this on any cartridge, on any caliber longer than that. Any bore diameter bigger than that. So if you can see all this, you can see, I mean, it's not complicated, but you got to have your barrel, you know what I mean? You got to have the barrel. And then you got to figure out, well, where are we going to cut it? And how much is it going to measure, you know what I mean? How much is it going to measure on the outside? So that somewhat determines your outside dimension. Then you got to look at how big a hole do we have through here. Because as this barrel is right now, maybe I should point this out. You know, this barrel has 300 thousandths on a side right now. So the shallowest tenon, largest diameter tenon that you can cut that will interface properly with the threads is going to be the best one. And so, I mean, you can literally do it like, okay, is this the right outside diameter? Does this have the right inside diameter for whatever thread you're going to use? Is it the right thread length, etc.? And then you can figure out which one it is you're gonna use. And then once all that is done, once this is actually on there, okay, which is enough work in itself, then you have to go and do all the outside, in the lathe, in the same setup, you gotta do all the outside work on it, you gotta do the inside work through it, which is kind of a little bit hairy because this will already be completely finished. And it'll have an 11-degree crown on it. When you run that boring bar in there, the boring bar is going to come through. Come and see if you can show them this. Let's just pretend that the end of this was the boring bar, right? And the boring bar is going to come through. Let me see if you can see that. See that in there? Can you possibly see that? You have to make sure, can you see it? You should be hand zooming, Vicki. Can you see it? Just yes or no?
So.
You have to make sure that if this was your boring bar, that the tip of your boring bar does not come back and hit into the crown, the meticulous crown that you put on the actual end of the barrel. Anyways, it's quite stressful. It's one of the reasons why I hate putting this crap on barrels. I just don't like doing it. I do acknowledge, of course, that on 330, like this 338 Lapua that's going to shoot 300 grain bullet, you have to have a brake. I mean, it doesn't matter. That stupid gun right there probably weighs over 20 pounds, but even with it, you have to have a brake. I mean, so there are certain cartridges that start with the big 30s, at about 30 Nosler, and then go 338 Winchester and like 340 Weatherby, 338 Lapua, 338 Lapua improved, 33 XC. They have to have brakes. They just absolutely have to have brakes. But the good thing about it is that's why Harl's makes this. Look at this honking thing. Okay, I don't want to put brakes on, but I don't mind putting this on because this one, it didn't do any damage to the end of that barrel. Look how much steel you still have. Okay? The inside of this measures 1 inch. So you've still got an inch of steel. Not an inch, but a total inch of steel. But let's just say it was, say it's 338, 438, 538, 638, 738, 838, 938. You've got a whole bunch of metal. Anyways, I've ranted here long enough. These two are going to be project guns, especially this one. I know for sure that's going to be a full-blown project gun because that's my gun. And then when it's done, maybe it'll be available. This is a customer gun. Whether it's going to be full-blown project gun or not, I don't know yet. There might be, he might have a budget. That other gun, I'm going hog wild on it. The only thing I'm going to keep on it is I'm going to keep the stock and the receiver and maybe the bottom model. But other than that, I'm going all out and try to make it shoot as best I can. Go to Harl's. If you're having trouble with all this stuff, go to Harl's Precision. Great group of guys. They really are. We've been dealing with Harl's Precision, more than 20 years, I bet.
Yep.
And my Harl's Precision powder measure I bet it's 40 years old. It's old and it's still going. I use it all the time. That thing is excellent. Anyways, it's as with most stuff. Oh, by the way, that's something else I forgot to mention. Come here. So I'm talking about potential things that might cause this not to shoot. When you see a bolt nose that's all shined up like that and it's got marks on it that where it's hitting the back of the barrel tenon, trust me, it won't shoot. So there's something wrong right there. And another thing I noticed too is, see how much tension is on that plunger? I always take, even with my brand new bats, I take that out, I take the plunger and the spring out, and I grind them down. I'll knock off a coil or two off of that spring. I do not like them to be that's a lot of pressure. Unless your chamber is perfect with zero tolerance in it, it tries to take that case and push it to the side. It's trying to push it to the side, which is not good. I noticed there's some marks too. This is a bat with a sliding plate. They call that the sliding plate, which is actually a really strong system. I see some marks on that also.
Let me see it without your finger in the way.
Pardon me?
Let me see it without your hand.
Can you say it?
Your hand in the way.
The other thing is I see a bunch of marks back here too. So this thing, I don't know. It's got problems. The thing about this is, and I really am going to wrap this up, is there's hundreds, maybe hundreds, 100 operations. You got to get every single one right. And if you miss even one, especially if it's a critical one, say like bedding or a bad scope or, you know, there's so many different things, or something, it won't shoot, is what I'm trying to say. If you miss something, it won't shoot. So you got to get everything right. And hopefully you guys are going to see this. Hopefully, you know, everything turns out great. And because I am going to load for it and shoot it. So I'm going to switch the barrel. I'm going to put one of these on there. I'm going to load for it. I'm going to shoot it. In all likelihood, I'm going to bed it somehow into this Ford monstrosity of a chassis. And we'll go from there. Anyways, that's enough. See ya.